Is COVID-19 slowing down the hottest growing CPG category in the United States? It has been about 5 months since I've had a specific video that focused on CBD, and I figured coronavirus would kind of give us a perfect backdrop to discuss some of the things that have been going on with CBD this year in 2020, and maybe some of the effects that COVID-19 and the retailing environment, just uncertainty in general. While this video will be focused on CBD, I did want to make just kind of a note around THC and just the legalization of marijuana as a whole. Recently made a post on my Facebook that said, I believe COVID-19 and the associated recession would act similar to the Great Depression and it ending prohibition. This will similarly speed up the legalization of marijuana across states. There will be huge budget gaps that will be caused by COVID-19, and that could be lessened by taxing illegal activities that public perception has softened on over the years. Now, to bring this back into CBD and consumer packaged goods, you guys have seen just the immense amount of demand that has moved towards CPG products in general. Just these last couple of weeks in terms of earnings reports of the mega CPG conglomerates, all of them are showing huge gains in their product lines. And I kind of want to start at the top level, being that CBD is kind of the new hyper-growth CPG category. It's not legal in the United States. Technically, I guess it's just a matter of enforcement at this point. But is it acting like the general CPG category as a whole? Is it seeing the growth that general categories are seeing? And to answer this question, it kind of requires us to dig in and maybe prove or disprove a few assumptions around CBD. The first assumption is around that CBD will act similar to alcohol, tobacco, and other vices during COVID-19. There's this old rule of thumb that during any kind of recession, depression, large negative event that happens, one that's depressing, you tend to have consumers that will lean on vices like alcohol, tobacco, and that will help them grow even under economic conditions in which all categories are seeing declines. They actually grow, they don't retreat during that time. And anecdotally, we actually talked about this when I did the COVID-19 effect pivotal interview that I had with my friend, high performance coach Colby Knepp. We talked about how some of his clients actually were reverting back to a lot of those bad behaviors during times of stress and uncertainty because it was just kind of a natural reaction. And that's where this old rule of thumb has kind of come up time and time again. It's proved itself, and it's proving itself today with some of those categories I talked about, with alcohol and tobacco and maybe some other kind of vices. Those are all up during COVID-19. But is CBD considered a vice? I personally do not think it is one. I think if we are considering psychoactive cannabinoids, then yes, I think that would be a vice. But if we're just kind of thinking about CBD singularly, I do not believe that it's used similar to some of the other vices. Vices are definitely used to relieve stress and anxiety, and even though they can't really technically claim anything because that gets into a bunch of issues, legal mumbo jumbo, and I'm not going to go into that right now. But based on consumer surveys, the stress anxiety piece is the biggest driver of sales with consumers. In fact, Brightfield Group actually said that 40% of CBD users plan to use more of it during COVID-19 because of that reason of just kind of elevated stress levels, anxiety levels. So if we're not considering it in the category of vices, then maybe it would act similar to maybe another subcategory of CPG that's doing pretty well, like nutritional supplements. Now, as you can see from the SPINS chart, CBD sales have been flat during the first part of COVID-19. that is compared to vitamins, minerals, and supplements without the consideration of sports nutrition that have performed extremely well. So they don't seem to be lining up directly with some of the massive growth we've seen with vitamins, minerals, and supplements. But it is important to note that SPINS and all traditional sales data aggregators like IRI or Nielsen do not account for digital sales. And despite the kind of legal ramifications of e-commerce and selling something that is federally illegal to sell, so dealing with interstate sales, CBD has done extremely well in e-commerce since the beginning, and it continues to be the primary channel of sales. And it's pretty impressive to think about that, because honestly, you don't have the same marketing vehicles, digital marketing vehicles, that you have with other consumer packaged goods companies, but they've been able to figure out a way and have been arguably one of the scrappiest at adapting to some of the COVID-19 retailing environment changes that have happened. And various reports and stories have touted digital sales growth with CBD brands. One in particular, a CBD-infused beverage maker called Vibes, noted a 600% month-over-month increase in online sales. While the brand's retail business has taken a hit due to the closure of on-premise accounts in mom-and-pop stores, which accounts for about 2/3 of their retail business, the company has turned to direct-to-consumer to meet rising demand. Additionally, Brightfield Group also reported that CBD brands that have shared sales data with them for different reports, they have talked about that the strongest CBD brands have seen a uptick of sales of around 30% since that initial spike that pretty much all kind of stockpiling happened during that one period of time in around mid-March. They've seen around a 30% continual growth uptick since that time. And it's important to note that, and it's important to extract out like one important note there, and that's around the strongest brands. What they are kind of meaning around the strongest brands is that these are the CBD brands that are building a brand, building an experience, and not necessarily just creating products that have CBD in them that are just kind of thoughtless. Also, CBD brands that are building a community and actually connecting with their consumers. These are what we're talking about when you're talking about strong brands, and they're going to continue to perform well even after this challenging period in retail. Outside of e-commerce, a lot of the CBD sales still happen in some like untracked channels or small independent like drugstores and things that necessarily are not a part of a lot of like the aggregate sales reports. So for the most part, they're kind of unaffected on that side of things. Now, food service or on-premise type things, you're going to be, hit with very hard. And then also with some of the largest retail partners that have been kind of first adopters, ones like Sephora and Ulta Beauty, Nordstrom's or Neiman Marcus, they've been pretty much decimated at this point from a top down. Those retailers are not able to get a ton of sales generated for the category. So kind of bringing back to that first question, like how is CBD doing today because of COVID-19? I honestly think it's a mixed bag. On one hand, some of the earliest retail channels and e-commerce will continue to grow. Social listening data from Brightfield Group shows that there has been an uptick in CBD associated search results and social media mentions, even after this surge that happened around the 420 holiday. But on the other hand, like I mentioned, around some of these very large retail channels and ones that are getting more and more interested in CBD and maybe are not resetting categories and interested in rocking the boat during COVID-19 because of the uncertainty, all of that is kind of put on hold right now. And that's where the market's going to greatly grow with these large retail channels, because that's where a lot of the casual consumers, ones that are interested in trialing but are seeing it while they're walking around and, kind of impulse buy, they buy it. That's where a lot of that is happening. The ones that are users, like heavy users of CBD, or maybe ones that are highly motivated to do some type of trialing, they're going to find it. They're going to find it online, or they're going to find it in store in some of these smaller retailers. So this will really just kind of compress the current state, kind of put things on hold and lessen that high growth rate that was predicted this year. I did want to kind of bring up a final note around the CBD supply side, and then also just the pricing that's associated with that side of the business. The supply chain has held up extremely well, and honestly it's been an oversupply situation for a lot of it based on finished goods and some of the biomass. And that makes sense because CBD, obviously a lot of attention happening. It's also very insulated from more of a globalization standpoint on the supply chain. You have most of the actual product being grown in the United States domestically. And kind of mentioning around that oversupply, when we're talking about just the CBD isolate, pricing on a kilo has went down somewhere around 75% over the last 12 to 18 months. So there's been a huge decrease in price around the oversupply of product. And you're also seeing on the consumer side that pricing is getting a little bit better for them. The inflated margins, the high price of product is coming down. That's mostly because the market is needing to react to a lot of the bad entrepreneurs, the unexperienced entrepreneurs that got into this game. They thought it was going to be extremely easy, but then after they were not able to sell product and they didn't have any money coming in, they had to put sales promotions and things to draw their price down, and that ultimately drags people with it, and especially during times of uncertainty like COVID-19 when liquidity matters a lot. So where does the market go from, a pricing, supply, competition standpoint? COVID-19 will hurt a lot of the small and inexperienced entrepreneurs in the CBD market. They're going to go out of business, and that's going to help a lot of the larger brands that have had to compete with this surge of people coming into the market and trying to create products and brands. I think the oversupply issue will essentially regulate itself over time, just with general supply and demand. As people see the pricing, they'll either stop producing product or they'll produce more of it based around, the need in the market. So I think all that will kind of regulate itself over time. But in the short term, I think there's going to kind of continuously be an oversupply right now, especially with 2020 kind of lining up with large retail channels being kind of washed. It's not going to produce the multiplier effect, the high growth towards the CBD market that was predicted. So I think overall, to answer that first question around how is CBD doing from all angles with COVID-19, I think that it's definitely stunting the growth of the category. I don't think it's closing it back up in Pandora's box, but I definitely think that it is having effects on it. And that's mostly because the market as a whole on all sides of it is still nascent and still trying to figure itself out right now.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to help support me, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button on this video. If this is the first time you've been introduced to my videos, would love for you guys to be a part of my community by subscribing to my channel. I upload several videos just like this weekly. And if you guys want to connect further outside of this platform, I do include all of my social media links down below. I just want to thank you guys again for your time. Hopefully I gave you some value in return, and we'll see you guys on the next video.